Ida B. Wells, African-American journalist and activist, traveled and risked her life for many years while attempting to end lynching. She traveled all over the South and collected data on when and why lynchings occurred. Wells was a founding member of the NACW along with the NAACP. She was influenced by the lynching of a couple of her friends and then launched an extensive investigation of lynching. In 1892, she published a pamphlet entitled Southern Horrors, which detailed her findings. Through her lectures and books, Wells countered the rape myth claim used by lynch mobs to justify the murder of African Americans. Through her research, Wells found that lynch victims had at one point either challenged white authority or had successfully competed with whites in business or even politics. As a result of her outspokenness, a mob destroyed the offices she was working at and threatened to kill her. She fled Memphis, more determined to continue her campaign to raise awareness of Southern lynching. Wells then took her movement to England and established the British Anti-Lynching Society in 1894.
In her speech, Ida B. Wells spoke to those who believed that lynching is justified during an NAACP conference. She does this to convince them that it is unjust and uncalled for. As she speaks, Wells uses an accusatory tone to draw attention to the fact that people are letting this thing happen.
As a way of persuasion, Wells supports her purpose with the use of rational logic, better known as logos. She does this by stating factual statistics to appeal to one's common mind. For instance, mob murder increased yearly until 1892. More than 200 victims were lynched, and the statistics show that 3,284 men, women, and children have been put to death in this quarter of a century. During the last 10 years, from 1899 and 1908 inclusive, the number lynched was 959. Of this number, 102 were white, while the colored victims numbered 857. This emphasizes how many people were being killed from lynching and proof that lynching follows a color line. Wells also lists a record of lynchings, cited, for example, 92 people died for no reason and 10 for race prejudice. This all ties up to the main idea of unjustified lynching. Incorporates the use of emotion to appeal to the hearts of her readers and to get her point across. To explain, 2 men were lynched, hundreds of people driven from their homes, all because a white woman said a Negro assaulted her. A mad mob went to jail, tried to lynch the victim of charge, and not being able to find him, proceeded to pillage and burn the town and to lynch 2 innocent men. Later, after the police had found the woman's charges false, she published a retraction. The indictment was dismissed and the intended victim discharged, but the lynched victims were dead. As the audience reads this story, it affects the persuasion of Wells' point of view because it draws an emotional feeling. Innocent people were killed for no reason, and the story implies lynching as punishment is demonizing. The use of pathos helps argue why lynching is not humane.
Wells uses a periodic sentence to develop her point more clearly. While speaking on ways to prevent lynchings, she said, "Agitation, though helpful, will not alone stop the crime." By saying agitation won't stop lynching, she continues to educate her listeners about it. Although the interruption that agitation is helpful teaches listeners that they should not give up on protesting lynchings. Overall, Wells uses a periodic sentence to educate her listeners about how lynchings are not going to be stopped by social unrest alone. Wells also develops her purpose by using diction. As she describes those who participated in one lynching, she says, "The irresponsible, bloodthirsty animals who swept through the streets of Springfield, beating an inoffensive, law-abiding citizen to death in one part of town." Her description of the mob as irresponsible, bloodthirsty criminals versus the victim being an inoffensive, law-abiding citizen leads her listeners to think worse of the mob. Saying the mob was irresponsible also reminds listeners that these people weren't acting with any authority or legal cause. This use of diction continues to achieve Wells's purpose of convincing listeners that lynching is bad.
Wells also uses an illusion to convince her listeners to agree with her. She said, "With malice toward none but the charity for all, let us undertake the work of making the law of the land effective and supreme upon every foot of American soil, a shield to the innocent, and to the guilty punishment swift and sure." Her quote comes from President Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural speech. By alluding to the speech of a man who was famous for his good character and a part in the emancipation of slaves, Will supports the idea that people should be treated fairly. This contrasts with the representation of lynchings, which are unfair and don't do any good.
Because of Wells' life, she knew the hardships of being a former slave and firsthand saw the unjust happening with lynching. Her aim was to persuade people that lynching was a terrible thing, and though it seemed that things were going to get better, nothing was actually being achieved. Wells' life goal was to end lynching for black people and to promote equality between races